so that I can post it. So welcome to our fifth session in a sense of our focus class. So do want to ask you in a couple of minutes how it's been going and if you found some of this helpful, and we'll review some of the things that we did in the class. We'll do a couple of meditations based on the flashlight and the river of thoughts. And so as kind of a refresher for what we did in the class. But first, let's do a quick pause just to get started and ask yourself the question, where's your attention now? Probably listening to my voice and looking at the screen, but there may be other things vying for your attention. So where's your attention right now? Is it focused? Is it scattered? There's no right or wrong. I'm not saying to judge that, but just kind of noticing what the focus is like at this moment. I'll pause so you can just sort of observe. All right, so quick way to pause and just sort of check in. And I think that's a good informal practice to continue doing. If you can remember to kind of just occasionally throughout the day, sort of check in. Where's your attention? What's the quality of your attention like? Are you feeling focused? Are you feeling scattered? Somewhere in between? And so what's it been like, folks? Let me open it up. If you have, you can either use the chat or speak up, but just curious to see. This is the first time I've done a class like this. It's similar, where we use the mindfulness meditative techniques, but I've liked the way that and I'll move it to the next slide. This is based on the book, if you recall, Peak Mind. And we have the author of that coming on Thursday to a Smilo Wellness Workshop, and she's going to do a talk at 4 o'clock, 4 to 5:15. So we really hear it right from the original source. But what I try to do is incorporate some of her principles using the flashlight imagery, for example, and we'll do that in a moment. But what's it been like for you? Do you feel like this has helped with your focus and your attention, or do you need more? Or I know it's not going to be the be and end all, but what do you think? Any feedback or thoughts about how this has worked for you or not?
Hi.
Yes.
So it's Dawn here, but thank you very much for this time to just refocus. I think it's a great opportunity to get back and get a little bit more centered. I teach yoga and a little bit of mindfulness as well. So, but you never do enough for yourself. So it's been really good to be able to join a group and to do that again. And I'm doing some more at home now because of it. So thank you.
Good. Couple of key things there. These, and they help me too. They help me refocus and remind myself. And I've just been on a long vacation actually, and that was challenging because I didn't lose my routine, but it just gets all jumbled and different. So, but the other thing you said too, it really helps, I think, to come together with others. Yes. and do this. So if, we used to have like a meeting in New Haven where we would have on a weekly basis a regular group that would come by. And since the pandemic, we've been doing it on Zoom, and there's a great way, and we've got people from Greenwich all the way over to at least Lawrence Memorial. I know that much. I'm not sure about Westerly, and in between. So it does create a community. So a couple of comments here. Thank you. Appreciate that. The more practice focusing my attention, the better I get at it. Good. That's the whole point. So, yeah, it's like training that puppy. Well, you got to keep training the puppy so that it becomes well behaved, like our attention. I'm also allowing myself to go with the flow and trust that all will work out for my best good. Yeah, that's a good point. I think we want to go with the flow. We don't want to be, make this like a really effort kind of a thing. Like if we're really striving, if it's becoming like just another chore, I don't think that's helpful. We want to make it, so we want to try to approach it with a good attitude, maybe of discovery, curiosity, and see how it can help. It has helped, but I have a sticky on my monitor to remind myself, good, to do when my thoughts wander. Very good. Well, whatever works. I love that approach. I always have to have something in my physical environment too. And yeah, you're not alone with your wandering thoughts. We all have those. Feeling support from others. Yeah. Yeah. And so, we do, I think a lot of I do a monthly refresher class that's sort of become a nice community. So if you're not on the invite for that, just let me know. I'll send you the invite. It's the second Wednesday of the month from same time as this, actually 12:30 to 1:15. So let me know if you want to join that. It's been challenging remembering during a busy shift to stop. Yeah, that's the hardest part. And so, whether it's a sticky or some sort of reminder or a brief pause in between your busy day, that's important. But when I do, it's so beneficial. Yeah, good. So I'm glad you're seeing it, that it is beneficial. Good comments. Great. So any other questions or thoughts about, keeping it going? Because that's really the purpose. What can we do to, keep this into our regular routine so that it is helpful? And the more we do it, the more we train the puppy of our attention and our mindfulness. It really does make a difference. I firmly believe that. I know the studies showed that, but it really does make a difference. In her book, she talks about the sweet spot of 12 minutes a day. And what she did there was she did research with high stress occupations. And what she found was that the minimum amount of time to get the best benefit was 12 minutes a day. So that's really what to shoot for if you can. And over that amount, if you do more than that, is kind of gravy. So if you can do more of that, that's great. So yeah, if you're putting, Sent, I see you put in the chat that you want to be included in that refresher. That's what you mean, right? So if anybody else wants to be included, feel free to put that in there or send me an email later and I'll send in the invite. I see Melissa too. All right, I'll check these afterwards. Good. All right, so again, Amishi Jha, PhD, is coming on Thursday. So if you don't know about that and you want to come, let me know and I can tell you how to sign up for that. That is a Zoom session. So let's do the flashlight. Remember, the flashlight idea is that we use the flashlight to focus our attention on our breath. But you can use it on another anchor of attention. It could be a part of the body, it could be a sound, but the more traditional way is to focus on the breath. But you could be doing movement. I'm certainly not a yoga expert, but mindful movement, stretching, gentle yoga, all ways to keep that flashlight of attention focused on the part of the body that you're focusing on, or the particular pose or the stretch that you're doing. So And the idea that when we get distracted, that flashlight gets, pulled and focused on something else, shines on whatever it was that distracted us. So, but we're holding the flashlight so we can, redirect it. And that's the training the puppy imagery of that. We have to keep in a friendly, gentle, supportive way, shining the flashlight back. So, 4 weeks is a good period of time, and I appreciate you all participating. But we got to keep it going, to really make a difference. So keep working on it. So, all right, I will go back and check these chats so that I see if you need if you need the invite to the refresher or the invite to this Thursday's class, I'll make sure you get those. Good. So let's do the flashlight exercise just as a beginning practice. And again, we think of this like training a puppy. I didn't want to show the video, so. What if I escape it there? Oh. It's actually a video here. Well, it doesn't matter. I'll just leave it like that. All right, so let's get comfortable. We're going to find our flashlight sitting in an upright, stable, alert posture. That's always a good way to kind of, take care of the body. And closing the eyes if you're comfortable with that, or you can keep them slightly open with a downward gaze. So sitting kind of straight, shoulders back, upright, but not uptight, chest open in a position that feels natural and where you can be restful as well. And just beginning by feeling the breath, following the gentle flow of each breath in and out of the body. Just letting the breath move at its natural pace, not controlling it. And tuning into the breath-related sensations. Maybe coolness of the air going in and out of the nostrils. Sensation of the lungs filling, the chest expanding, the belly moving in and out. Choose one area of the body where you really feel the breath most directly, where it feels most prominent to focus on. And direct and maintain your attentional focus here, like a flashlight, with a strong, bright beam. And just continue to breathe and follow the breath, follow the sensations, keeping that flashlight focused on that one specific area of your breathing. And simply notice whenever your flashlight is moved, and then move it back. The real work of the exercise, after you've chosen the target for your flashlight, is to pay attention to what happens next. Notice when thoughts or sensations or sounds arise that pull your flashlight off target. when you notice that your flashlight has been pulled away, simply redirect it back to your breath. Nothing special to do other than this simple, gentle nudge that acts supportively to move the flashlight back. And that's it. That's the basic flashlight practice. And we can close the exercise when you're ready. You can open your eyes if you've had them closed and reorient. And thank you for some of the chats. I see those. I will send you those invites for whatever you'd like. So very good. Now, remember, we also did, you can, instead, if you did want to use something different, if the flashlight image doesn't work for you, you can count your breaths. That's another way to focus and increase your concentration. So you breathe in and then count 1 on the out breath. You breathe in and count 2. And you do that as high as you can get, up to 10, and then start over. And if you get up to about 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 and you lose your focus, that's okay. That's kind of what happens. But it's a good way to mentally note to yourself and keep yourself on track. Or another way is to use mental noting and saying to yourself, in on the in breath, out on the out breath. Or if you want to use some other term, calm, for example, on the in breath, and ease on the out breath, or whatever words you might really like, what resonate with you. Those can be ways that kind of keep us focused and concentrated. That's the basic practice, and that's really what helps train our attention. But it's more than just the flashlight of attention. If you remember, we also talked about the floodlight, which is in some ways different than the flashlight. It's more open. The floodlight is being more aware. She says it's more kind of like when you see a flashing yellow light, a stoplight when you're driving, you immediately go on alert. In other words, you open up your attention, you just sort of, instead of being focused on the very specific, the red light, for example, or the road in front of you, you try to check out and see, is there something coming into the intersection or whatever it is? So you're more kind of open and receptive and broad in your attention. So that's the other part. And the other practice that we did was a simple body scan. And that's another way to kind of, you can focus on different parts of the body with the flashlight. You can still use that imagery if you like, as you start, for example, at the top of your head and you move to different parts of the body in the body scan. But at the same time, you keep your awareness open. And it may be almost like what you're doing when sounds arise or other things, happen in your awareness and your attention gets pulled. Or it's also the same as when you finish a full body scan, you go from head to toe, for example. Commonly what's done is you then open up and you feel the whole body, the whole sense of this dance of sensations in the body. And that's sort of a little more like the floodlight and being aware. There's another practice which you'll get a sense of in the second practice that I'm going to do today, being aware of things in a more open way, things in the background, being aware of mental activity, but being aware of other stuff too. So it's more of an open monitoring kind of an exercise. So we don't have time for all of them, but if you remember, we did we did the flashlight. That was 1. We did the body scan. That was 2. We did the river of thought. We're going to do some of that today. And then the 4th one was the connection exercise. Maybe if we have time, I'll finish with a little bit of that. And then the juggler part of the whole practice is your executive functioning. And that has to do with keeping the balls in the air, keeping all the things going that you're working on. But the difficulty there is that if somebody throws you another ball or something happens to throw your juggling off kilter, then that's the distraction. That's what makes it hard to come back to focus. And remember, these are all things that we experience all the time. The kryptonite for all this is stress, poor mood, and threat. So these are things that take our focus away, that make it difficult for us. And who isn't under a lot of stress, and who doesn't have poor moods with all that's going on in our world? Not to mention our own, private personal lives, but the world in general can easily throw us into difficult emotions, and the feeling of threat. Being, we don't know what's going to happen next. We're worried about all sorts of things, right? So these are things that work against us and are pretty powerful forces, right? So all the more reason to train on a regular basis. And if you recall, the 12 minutes is the optimal, but even if you can just do 2 or 3 minutes, that helps. And I found that, like I said, in my vacation time, for example, I didn't have as much regular time to sit and meditate. But I did a lot of more informal practices, and I did more shorter things that I could fit in. So if that works too, depending on your circumstances, do those. But the other thing that's kind of cool about all this is it makes sense, right? If we increase our ability to focus and attend and to pay attention to things that are important, including people around us. And of course, we're serving people in our work. The better we can be focused and concentrated, we'll remember better. Now, she uses the image of a whiteboard when she talks about this, and we'll do that in the second practice. But the whiteboard of the whiteboard helps us with our working memory. And the whiteboard is where we place things for a brief period of time that we need to remember certain things. They don't go into long-term storage at this point. They're just, in fact, she calls the whiteboard is helpful to remembering brief things, but it's done with disappearing ink. So the only way to keep the things on your whiteboard of memory, the working memory, is to keep focusing on them. And that's kind of eventually moves it into more longer term memory. But again, that's why we feel scattered and distracted so often, is that those kryptonite will often, take us away from that. Oh, and the other point, just as a refresher, I think, and this makes sense to me, I hope you kind of get this, that one of the reasons for doing the body scan is this quote here: you need to make sure both your mind and your body show up for the stuff you want to remember, so that when we experience things experientially, we feel them in the body. When we take in memories and experiences through our senses, that solidifies the memories. So all of this really does help our memories. But as you know, even when we sit in meditation, it can often feel a lot like this. We have all kinds of thoughts come up. And if you've been in any of our mindfulness classes, remember, we can't stop thinking, and we're not trying to stop thinking, and we can't empty our minds. Our minds are like any other organ in the body, but their job, the mind's job, is to generate thoughts. And I don't know how they figured this out, but it's something like we have something like over 60,000 thoughts a day. So even when we sit and we're trying to create a still body and still mind, or at least to let things settle a bit, there's still going to be lots of thoughts that pop up, kind of like in this funny cartoon. All kinds of stray, random things come up. But this is where the insight can come, because lots of our thought patterns are what they call sticky thoughts, conditioned thought patterns, things that happen that have been conditioned in our minds for, many years. And what may have been a useful thought pattern when we were younger may not really be so useful now. And so that's where some of the insight of our meditation practice can come in. So the next part of the practice, we begin to pay more attention, and this is the open monitoring part of it, begin to pay more attention to the river of thoughts. And in a way so that we can see what's going on. I'll give you an example. I had been thinking to myself before this vacation that I went on, that I've been meditating for a while, obviously, and I was sort of thinking, I'm not really sure what my thought patterns are that sort of get me into trouble. But what I realized in my travels, what really pulled on my strings a little bit, kind of like push my buttons, if you will. Whenever we went to go somewhere, like if we had to catch a train or a plane, or we had to get somewhere, we had to, it was uncertain how we were going to get there. It's totally new territory. That's what brought up my anxiety. And I realized that when I started to begin to, include that in my meditation, and began to have the insight that, okay, that's what is really creating this angst, is realizing that I don't have control. And that's probably why I end up at the airport a lot earlier than I need to be at the airport, for example, because I overcompensate sometimes. But when you can't, and you don't, you have to rely on traffic and all sorts of conditions. And if you're in a different country and you're trying to get a taxi, and how do you get that taxi? And it's anxiety provoking. But that to me was like, a trigger. And I realized that was a thought pattern that I was unwittingly allowing to continue in a way. So what I try to do is I try to work with that, notice that in my meditation, so that in my meditation I can notice how it feels in my body, how it feels in my mind, what feelings come up, so that when in real life, when I'm not meditating and those things start to happen, I have a little more control or a little more insight, and I can begin to make a difference in my own thought patterns and determine which might be helpful and which may be unhelpful, which are fueling the fire and which are kind of putting the fire out. So let's do this. Let me, that's just an example that I realized on my trip. And this is what happens if you let it get out of control. It gets to be like this, really feeling quite overwhelming and out of control and, a burdensome. Or as Mark Twain said, my life has been filled with terrible misfortunes, most of which never happened. And we made all the trains, we made all the connections, and even if we missed something, we figured out a way around it. So, it wasn't really a catastrophe. Sometimes we tend to catastrophize things, right? And that's mostly, it's in our mind. So anyway, let's do the river of thought. I'm going to start this meditation with a little bit of the whiteboard imagery, okay? And then we'll go into the river of thoughts part of it. So we still have a good period of time, I think. So let's take a moment. I'll just pause before we get started. Any questions before I get into this next exercise? Okay. So let's do it. Take a moment to get yourself comfortable, find that position that is, again, relatively upright as you sit so you can be alert, but also you want to be relaxed. And just allowing the body and the mind to settle. You might bring your awareness into the body, perhaps notice the body sitting here, feeling your feet on the ground, feeling your body in the chair, letting your hands and arms rest comfortably, and breathing. And just with each out breath, letting the body relax, letting yourself settle in, letting gravity sink in. And again, starting with the image of the flashlight, shine the flashlight, that beam, onto the selected area of your breath. And just for a few cycles anyway, let's focus on that part of the breathing where you're shining the flashlight on. And now when you get distracted, when the flashlight gets pulled away, notice where it goes. This is the new step. In the first exercise, we just brought the attention and the flashlight immediately back to the breath. This time, I want you to pause for a moment and observe where the flashlight is now directed and give it a label. Identify what type of distraction has appeared on your whiteboard. Is it a thought, an emotion, a sensation? And a thought could be a worry or a reminder or a memory, an item on your to-do list. An emotion could be a feeling of frustration or an urge to stop doing the practice and do something else, or a twinge of happiness, or a little bit of a stress feeling. Whatever it is, just notice. And then there's sensations, a sensation in your body, an itch or a sore muscle, or the back hurting, for example. Or so just noting what pulled your attention. And we kind of make this a quick process, so noticing it without getting completely swept away by it, without analyzing it. Now is the time to just simply notice what's on the whiteboard and not engage with it. Just label the contents as best you can from those three categories: thoughts, emotions, sensations, and then move on and come back to the present moment, come back to your breath after every instance of labeling. And repeat. And just I'm going to give you some open time to do that. Just notice what pulls your attention, what's on your whiteboard, label it, and then come back with your flashlight. There's nothing inherently bad about having stuff on your work whiteboard either, other than what's right in front of your nose. It's neither bad nor good. It's simply how the brain works and happens. Spontaneous thoughts arise. We use working memory to work something out that sometimes doesn't have anything to do with the present moment. We're puzzling out a problem, for example, figuring out how we feel about something, or planning or making a decision. But we can always re-center on the present moment with the flashlight, come back to the breath. But now let's broaden the awareness so that you're not selecting any target object. Instead, use the metaphor of your mind being like a river. You're standing on the riverbank, watching the water flow by. Imagine your thoughts, memories, sensations, emotions, whatever arises, as if they were flowing past you. Notice what appears there, but don't engage with it. Don't fish it up or chase it or elaborate on it. Just let it flow by. We're not even labeling it like we did with the whiteboard. We're just keeping an open, receptive observation of it, kind of stepping back, staying on the side of the river, watching it flow by. Your job right now is not to be making any distinctions between which content of the river is useful or relevant and what's mind wandering. You're not even going to try to stop your mind from wandering. The river will keep flowing. There isn't anything you can or need to do about that. This is the key to open monitoring. Allow your mind to do what it will. Your job is simply to observe that flow at a distance, without engagement or participation. Take a moment to just observe your river of thoughts. Now, if you have any difficulty letting things pass you by, if there are some sticky thoughts or strong emotions, just simply come back to your breath. Imagine your breath sensations as a boulder in the middle of all that flowing water. Rest your attention on that stable, steady object. And when you feel ready, broaden your attention again and go back to open monitoring. So let's just pause here now and stay in your meditative position. And I'm going to change gears a little bit. And we're going to bring in the idea of connection. And we talked about this a little bit before. Connection of others that are joining us here today. Connection of our coworkers and our teams. Connection of our families and friends and loved ones. So let's just take a moment and the final practice of the course was kind of like a loving kindness practice. So just bring to mind perhaps someone in your life that easily can bring up feelings of kindness and caring, someone who's been supportive and helpful to you, someone you really care about, who easily brings up those feelings. And just take a moment and bring them into your focus. And just send them these caring messages. May you be well. May you be safe. May you be free from suffering. May you have connection and care. Kind of sending out those messages to that person. And then include yourself. Imagine yourself sitting with that person, being with them, and sending the two of you the same message. May we be safe. May we be healthy and well. May we be free from suffering. May we have care and connection. And then opening up to others in your life. You can include anyone you like in your circle of work, family, and friends and family and loved ones, and kind of as a community. May you all be safe and healthy and well. May you be free from suffering. May you have care and connection in your life. And just resting in those messages of care and connection and kindness for a moment before we close. And when you're ready, you can begin to open your eyes and reconnect with feeling your body in the chair again, and reconnect with your surroundings. And so we kind of included a few things in that last practice there. We included the river of thoughts and the whiteboard, as well as the care and connection of the last session that we did in the class. So I hope you found this all helpful. I really appreciate you being with me today. And as we look at these quotes from William James, the greatest weapon against stress is our ability to choose one thought over another. And if you can change your mind, you can change your life. So there's things to reflect on. So, here are just a few suggestions for going forward. Checking in with yourself. As I said, continuing to do these practices as best you can. Here's where I was talking about the practice of, trying to do this on a regular basis, daily-ish if you can, 3 minutes minimum, 12 minutes if you can. Asking yourself, where's my attention right now? It's a great way to kind of continue. Informally, just checking in with where your attention is. And then also paying attention to routine tasks. So all those things that we do on a regular basis. And then remember, we do have the phone meditations. I will also send out the recording, and that, we have lots of stuff stored on that YouTube page too. So if you ever want to go back, and I will check in and send those of you who asked for the invitations to the refresher that I do monthly, that also the upcoming webinar on Thursday with Amishi Jha. So thank you all. Any last questions or comments before we close out today? Thanks for being with me. I appreciate it on this focus journey.
Thank you, Bud.
Thank you. Thanks, Greta. Thank you all.
Thank you, Bud.
Yep. Thanks, Roberta. Good to see you all. Have a great day.
Thank you, Bud.
Thanks, Bud.